Thank you for joining us for the Springfield Business and Economic Review. I am your host, Sarah Wolin, with the Greater Springfield Chamber of Commerce. Today we have two guests with us, the first of which is Dr. Alan Woodson with the Greater Springfield Chamber of Commerce, and also John Strimstifer with the Sangamon County Community Foundation. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks for having us.
And of course, our topic for today will be the continuum of learning. So I'll start by having one of you tell me a little bit about what is the continuum of learning.
Well, Sarah, let me begin by saying that it is a community collaboration between the United Way of Central Illinois and the Sangamon County Community Foundation and the Greater Springfield Chamber of Commerce. And we're very proud I can speak from the Chamber's viewpoint of working with these other two great organizations to put together what we believe is a really great tool that's going to promote workforce development and education for our community.
Well, that sounds great. And John, what is the continuum striving to achieve?
Well, in a very simple way, we're trying to get every member of Sangamon County, every resident, to be ready to learn, ready to work, and ready to succeed ultimately. And this is, as Alan alluded to, three groups came together to kind of call the question to the community, but this is something we truly want to be owned by the community, and that we all are collectively working on this ambition of having everyone in our community as being a successful person. And we find the best way to achieve that goal is to have people working hard in the community, contributing on their own way, and of course to get there, they have to have the tools and the education necessary to be there.
Well, it really sounds quite broad then. When you talk about everyone in Sangamon County, this goes beyond one school district, this goes beyond one city. It really is encompassing everyone.
Matter of fact, Sarah, it includes higher education as well as K through 12. It is private and public schools, and it is county-wide. So in fact, it is very, very comprehensive, and we believe that's going to really be the strength of the program because it brings so many parties to bear on what is a very critical issue.
Right, it sounds like it. John, did you have something to add to that?
Well, I totally agree with Alan, and one of the things that we've learned throughout this process, which is really just getting underway, is that we can't also just say, schools, go do it, go educate our children so they become better people. It's the whole community that has to get behind that. A lot of people like to point fingers at teachers and school districts and all those educators, where it's really the responsibility of the whole community to make sure that we're all prepared to be successful.
Really is everyone coming together.
It is.
You mentioned how wide and over many stages of life this covers for folks, but I understand it's broken up into a couple of different areas. Alan, can you speak to those different stages?
Actually, Sarah is broken into 5 different areas, and the first area is a birth to pre-kindergarten, and that's what we're calling stage 1. And stage 2 is kindergarten through grades 5. Stage 3 is grades 6 through grades 12, and stage 4 is what we're calling our post-secondary education level, and stage 5 is employee development or incumbent worker training. So we're trying to get it literally from the very beginning all the way through to the point where young people and workers are all focusing on how to improve where they are at that particular point in time.
Well, that sounds great. Now, how are these teams going about their work? How are you going about these stages?
Well, I can begin to tell you that we have identified 2 co-chairs for each one of those 5 stages. One from the business community and one from education. And they also have some teams of people who are working with them, volunteers from the community. And then we have a steering committee that not only involves those 10 co-chairs, but also Dr. Harry Berman, who is the provost and the chief academic officer out at University of Illinois Springfield, who is serving as the chair, and 2 other at-large parties. And so it's really a group of 14, and it's an excellent model to kind of keep the process working.
It really sounds like some strong leadership with this. John, earlier you were talking about the 3 different organizations, and Alan just now with all these leaders. What a great effort.
It's very humbling to be a part of it, individually for me, I know, because we really have community leadership that's been brought to this effort. And these co-chairs, when you watch them in action at each of their action team meetings, are just incredible, because you have those educators, those business leaders coming together. You quickly realize how bright the people in the room are, and also the people who are joining each team, the people who are working in social services or their businesses themselves they're representing, or the educators there. Just when you get these conversations flowing, the power of having all these people in the same room good things are bound to happen.
Right. They're going to happen.
They are.
Now, Alan, you said earlier, very intentionally, it sounds like, one person from business and one person from education was leading each of these teams. Any thoughts as to why that's important or why you went about that way?
Yes, it was a very conscious decision, Sarah, because we wanted to make sure that while everyone understands the educational component, that we needed to make sure that we marry that with the business world, because what we found out in other aspects when John and I are looking at this is that there is oftentimes has been a disconnect between business and education.
Right.
And so to make sure that each of those entities are not working within their own separate silos, what we wanted to do is get them together so that we would have a vehicle for cross communication. And we think that we've identified such a vehicle in this way that we set it up.
That sounds great. And John, you mentioned the action team meetings with bringing all those folks in together. Right. Who is it open to participate in those different groups?
Anyone who's ready and willing.
Great.
You can sign up through the website continuumoflearning.org to get more involved. And I think there's not anyone in the community that doesn't have some stake in this game as far as education, whether it be they're a parent or they're a grandparent or they're just a citizen that needs to be retrained themselves. Whatever your interest might be, this covers all of a human being's life through this continuum. So if you're interested in middle school kids, you could get involved with Action Team 3, or if you have a young one like I do, you might like Action Team 1, pre-K. Anyone can get involved, and we're encouraging more and more people. We don't want to just limit it to just the education community or just the social service community or just the business community.
Right.
We want moms and dads, average Joe on the street, so to speak, that just has a curiosity and interest in their community to raise their hand and say, I'd like to help out too.
And it really speaks towards the community aspect of this that we spoke about earlier, was that it really takes everyone coming together to even discuss this, let alone make it a reality.
Well, and it does, and that's where, as you alluded to earlier, the power of our three organizations. We're three organizations with the Community Foundation, the United Way, and the Chamber that have kind of an overarching care and concern for the benefit of the community. And that is very powerful. Right. The Chamber with the Quantum Growth Initiative has just been incredible, and I'm not aware of any time, and I'm a lifelong Springfield resident,
You've been around.
that our Chamber has been this ambitious and really reaching out to the other segments and other sectors of the community to say we want to help in education. That's why Alan's absolutely correct. They were very intentional and coming saying we need to have co-chairs rather than just a single chair, because we don't want this to be just another school thing, so to speak. And then with the Community Foundation, we have had a good opportunity to have some funding come our way through a Community Works initiative, we call it, to look at these similar issues. And then also the United Way, through the way they're looking at restructuring the way United Ways around the country do business. They're trying to have more of a community impact. I think a little bit of the background on this, we're all three separately looking at doing things a little differently within our own organizations. Then we all started looking at each other and said, boy, wouldn't it be really neat if we all worked together.
Wow,
and here we go.
That's great. It's a great way to move it forward.
It's awfully powerful.
Well, so you mentioned a little bit about how the foundation is involved. Alan, how did the Chamber get involved? Why does the Chamber see value in this, and how does that tie into the other education initiatives of the Chamber?
Well, I tell you what, you know, at the Chamber, we're certainly, of course, concerned about business and moving the community forward in terms of entrepreneurial efforts. And it just made good business sense, if you will, if I could use that term, Sarah, for us to collaborate with the United Way and with the foundation, because we knew that they had particular strengths within their own respective organizations. And the key piece was that they were able to reach out to large segments of the community. And clearly there is strength in numbers, and the more people that we can get involved in this, the better off we're going to be. And also another one of the key pieces here is the linkages between one stage to the other, so that the people who are working in stage one are also interfacing with the people in stage two, and so on and so forth, so that there will be some coordination between the groups. And we're hoping that we'll get that kind of synergy, if you will, that's going to make the whole effort move forward.
Sounds great. And John, did you want to expand at all about how the foundation got involved and started to look into this?
Well, we received a grant about 5 years ago from the Grand Victoria Foundation out of Chicago, and it was a challenge grant to our community, and there's some a number of other things associated with it. But in its core, it was to create a permanent endowment through matching gifts, where the Community Foundation would hold this Community Works Endowment to address the issues of workforce development, child care, and land use and protection. And 2 of those 3 align perfectly with the continuum.
Right.
So that's the kind of the lens we're looking at the continuum through, is our Community Works lens. And we have some potential for other things to come with Community Works, which could bring perhaps even more resources to bear. But the whole power, again, of bringing the right people to the table and getting them in the same room and talking to each other is, I feel, much more powerful than the money alone.
Yeah.
Because you can throw money dollar after dollar after an issue and never really change it. And this is a way that we see beyond the dollars, which we also hope to bring to bear once we have some ideas in mind that how we can address the unmet needs. Having the right people there is really, really key.
Sounds like it's really set up for success. You talked also not only about your 2 organizations and United Way as the 3rd coordinating partner, but that anyone could get involved. What's the time commitment for anyone who's, a business person, an educator, a social service worker, a parent, or a concerned citizen? If they want to get involved, is this a commitment where they'd be active every day, once a month? What's the time commitment?
Well, Sarah, let me tell you that for each one of these stages, we have what we are calling action teams. It's important that you understand that we're not talking about committees per se.
Okay.
We're truly looking for people to take some action and have some ideas in place,
Get things
hopefully
done.
by the end of this calendar year.
Good.
And so they can simply go to the website, thecontinuumoflearning.org, or call the chamber or call the foundation or the United Way, and simply ask that they ask to volunteer, and we'll make sure that we get their names. And typically what has happened, at least here in the first couple of months, is to have a monthly meeting of these various action teams. And those groups have been meeting about an hour, hour and a half max. So it's a minimal amount of time there, but they get a lot done because they're working on aspirations, they're working on targets. And it's a real nice group that's focused on trying to make sure that they get things done and in a timely fashion.
Very good. Anything to add to that, John?
Well, I think Alan's right on target. It's really how much people want to get involved. And some people may just want to come to a meeting at some point and hear more about it, or know who to contact to find out more and get, once we get to the point where we have some plans in place, and we're hopefully going to have action steps from these action teams and come up with results. And I think there's going to be a lot of business leaders, a lot of educators, those folks that will say, well, gosh, I've heard about all the people who have been working and going to these monthly meetings, but I'd like to know more about it. So we're hoping that people from all walks of life with all different kinds of time availability can get involved in some way. But Alan's absolutely right. Right now, it's very action-oriented, and we want these people to not just go to meetings with no purpose. We want to get this rolling as soon as we can to start to address these issues.
Sounds like you have the right people around the table. Again, open up to anyone. And as you said, there's a timeline in place and you want some action by then. So that's a nice way to have it set up to move forward. I know beyond your 3 organizations, you also had some outside consulting help that came in to help with this. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Why don't you talk about Jay Connor?
Sure. Jay Connor is a gentleman that I stumbled across through a community foundation meeting with a group of Illinois community foundations a couple years ago. And Jay is a gentleman who works in communities all across North America, U.S. and Canada, and he's been in Europe too, working with communities to really think differently about how to address issues in any given geographic area. And what we've asked him to do is get involved with our continuum of learning and say, Jay, how can we wrestle with this idea, this notion of having every person in Sangamon County ready to learn, work, and succeed? And of course his eyes lit up and said, yeah, I've worked with similar communities around the country, not the least of which is about 30 minutes down the road in Decatur.
I was going to ask you, what other communities?
Right. He was working with Decatur and my good friend and counterpart at the Community Foundation in Decatur, Lucy Murphy, for about a year before he started working with us. And they're doing a similar initiative in Decatur on education to try and tackle that as well. Evidently it's an important issue in every community.
Yeah, it very much is.
But Jay has really forced us and challenged us to think differently about how to approach this, where you might think of your traditional strategic planning approach. We get pieces of poster board and markers out and write things and bullet points, and then we prioritize, and then you all go home and forget about it in a week.
Put it on the shelf.
We're trying not to do that.
Okay.
And with this, again, Jay has, I think, challenged us, wouldn't you agree, Alan, to kind of think differently and always remind ourselves to further engage the community. He has something he calls the Community Roundtable, which I think we're going to be implementing here. and this will be an ongoing thing beyond this calendar year where we get our first plan in place. We want to always have these community roundtables where we invite the public in to learn about the continuum, to have more and more input, because it's going to be an ongoing process. And Jay Connor has been a true help to us, I think, and will get us certainly on the right track.
That sounds
you
great.
know, Sarah, Jay has emphasized to us that this is really the beginning, the foundation, if you will. It is not the end. And so when we talked earlier about making sure that we get things done in a timely fashion, that is to set that foundation in place, hopefully by the end of the year. And upon that foundation, we can then build for the future, involve more people and more organizations.
That sounds great.
I think the key there is we never want to be satisfied. We always want to aspire to be even better in our community, because these issues are too important. As far as the workforce is concerned, we need to make sure we're competitive with every other community across not only the United States, but across the world. And in order to do so, I don't think we can ever be complacent. And this continuum will give us, I think, a strong foundation to address these issues on an ongoing basis.
Well, and that's a great segue into what do you ultimately hope to achieve? What do you hope to see at the end? Everyone ready to work, everyone ready to learn, work, and succeed, but what does that look like? What can that be in our community?
I see it really as a model that we can use, Sarah, to improve ourselves. John touched on it. We should not be satisfied with what we're doing right now, that we should really view this as a beginning. And I'm thinking that it's just going to make our entire community stronger, because it's going to show what can happen when you have working partnerships dedicated to the betterment of the entire community. So, well, it's involving all of our educational institutions and the business people and community-based organizations. It's like one large family located here within the confines of Sangamon County. So it is metropolitan in that sense. And we're just quite excited about where we are now, and more excited about where we want to be.
The potential.
When we look at each individual action team, we think around November, December, we're going to have some real targeted goals and results-oriented goals. And I've been the staff person that's really been associated with Action Team 1. So I can give you an example. For example, in Action Team 1, our aspiration is to make sure every single person that is under the age of 5, generally, in Sangamon County is ready for the first day of kindergarten. We want to have them.
So that's big.
There's
a lot to be ready for. There
is. And in order to do that, we're going to have some real hard steps that we're going to take and ready, hopefully by November, of what do we need to do to get there. So, for example, identifying all those human beings, all those little kids who are pre-K. Who are they? We don't even necessarily know who they are.
They might not be on people's radar.
Right. And then we're talking to these educators, these kindergarten teachers, and these child care providers. What are the tools they need in place in order to be ready? And then once we figure out who they are, what the tools are, then how do we get those tools to the people who can help get them prepared? So that's a kind of more of a tangible type thing. It's an example we've been using a lot. That's why it's easy for me to roll off my tongue right now. But each stage will have similar goals.
Similar like that. And one thing that brings to mind to me is that a lot of those steps might be happening in the community right now. There might be a lot of organizations doing different pieces of that. But this is really bringing them together to make sure there's communication between them and make sure everyone's being maximized. Would you say that's correct?
Absolutely. And that's, again, the real joy of seeing all these people in the same room, where people work with the same population, but they don't necessarily know what the other organization that's working in the community is doing as well. So just having the sharing of information is quite powerful. And rather than reinventing the wheel, we'll just put all the wheels on the right car.
There you go. Move them together forward.
Right.
You also mentioned other communities where this has occurred in, where people have talked about these types of partnerships. Of course, I'm sure they're a little different. Can you tell me about any successes that have been seen, or is there anyone that's farther down the road on this that we can learn from?
I don't know, John, if Jay has shared with us.
Well, the one is the Kalamazoo Promise. There's something that a lot of people around the country have heard about. And in Kalamazoo, they had one very wealthy donor that was able to create a scholarship program. So that helped, and that'd be nice for us to find as well. But that was born out of a process similar to ours. It wasn't that. Kalamazoo Promise has a nice name, and a lot of communities have tried to copy that. But not everyone has that wealthy philanthropist in their community. But the process can be in place so we can create opportunities that should come out of this process as well. And Mr. Connor was involved with Kalamazoo, Michigan, and knew intimately about how the Kalamazoo Promise was born. In Decatur, a little closer down the road to us, they are about a year ahead of us, and that whole idea, and that's why it was so easy for me to cite that example.
Yeah.
They focused on that pre-K first and did create an effort to identify every young person in their community.
Well, that sounds great. Alan, I know this is also closely related to some of the work you do through the Chamber with the Business Education Partnership. Can you speak a little bit towards what the Business Education Partnership is and how that can relate to the continuum?
Okay, thank you. The Business Education Partnership, Sarah, began in January 2006. And along the same lines what we've been talking about right here this afternoon, it was to make sure that we could bring together businesses and educational interests and community interests to make sure that we were all on the same page at the same time. And what we're finding out is that we can use this continuum and everything that is involved in it to help move the partnership's goals along. But we have programs such as the job shadowing initiative that we have through the partnership. We have some public policy initiatives underway. We have a major initiatives program, and many of those committee members from the Business Education Partnership who are on the major initiatives committee are all on these various task force and action teams within the continuum. So it's been a nice marriage of what they're doing with what we're now proposing. And it's another example of extending out into the community to make sure that we get all of their feedback, their ideas, or input, so that we can stitch together a really great program. And you can probably tell we're pretty excited about this.
It sounds like you're excited about it. And then you mentioned your roles as coordinating partners in conjunction with United Way. John, what is that role as a coordinating partner that you guys are serving?
Oh boy, it's an ever-changing job description.
You never know.
Really, it is for Alan and I and John Kelker with United Way and support staff at all three organizations, just keeping those lines of communication open at all times. And the Chamber, I need to give kudos to, is really taking the lead on that, and Alan and his staff of the Chamber really, as far as making sure emails get sent out and coordinating meetings and doing websites and those sorts of things. The Chamber's really taken the lead in that regard, but it's a lot of keeping those lines of communications open. I think we would all agree that collaboration isn't always easy, just because we all have our own missions we're obligated to fulfill internally, but we also have, as part of our missions, to look externally and work with others. And fortunately, we all like each other. I think that
makes it fun, right?
It does. It makes it a lot of fun. Alan and I could probably just hang out for a few hours and have a great time. And I think that's true with all the partners, and that makes it a lot more enjoyable. But also, I know it makes me feel proud to know that we're working with similar organizations that have similar goals and aspirations for the community, and it's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of hard work, but it's a lot of fun.
That sounds great. So a lot of folks might recall back in March you had the launch for this event, and then at that point it was to attract these community members to join the teams. But as we said, they could still join the action teams, correct? As we look forward, you mentioned, Alan, that November, December, we might have some plans from those action teams.
We're hoping by November this year to at least roll out our initial plans.
All right.
That is the timeline that each of the action teams has set for their respective groups to make sure that we stay on task.
All right.
And so again, if anyone wants to join, they can call either one of our three organizations, and we'll make sure that we get them properly seated with whatever group they want to work with, and keep it in mind that this is the beginning of a long, continuous process that we know is going to yield good benefits for the entire community.
And it's definitely not something that'll happen overnight. It's not like turning a light switch on or off. So what do you see as the vision after you roll out those action plan steps? What do you see as happening next?
Well, I see us putting together and putting into place some procedures and plans that are definitely going to benefit the community. John mentioned about a lot of times you have efforts like this and you come out with some plans, you put them on the shelf, and you never do anything with them. We want to make sure that that does not happen in this instance, that we put together a real game plan that can be executed and put into play for the benefit of the community, And as long as we have our respective organizations there to shepherd that process, I'm confident that in the end will result in a good product.
Yeah. Anything to add to that,
Well,
John?
and that's why it's a little risky to invite the scrutiny of the whole community, but but that's what's going to keep it together.
It is.
Because people should be asking me, hey, Stremster, what's going on with the continuum? And then we will be forced to answer those questions not only between now and November, but between now and hopefully the day I'm put in the ground here in Sangamon County. It's hopefully going to be that ongoing process, and that's why I, again, feel that having that scrutiny from the community, from our citizenry out there, that they should be asking us, what's next? How are we going to become even better?
How can we do better? And you brought up an interesting point with that comment you had just made, because although right now you want everyone to be ready to learn, work, and succeed, once all those people are ready, there's more people coming.
Right.
So this is really an ongoing process that once you have the framework in place, hopefully it'll carry on for them.
Yeah, and again, the Business Education Partnership, I think, is where the name Continuum came out of. Is it not?
It is.
And,
Thank you.
And, and it's a wonderful name because it's a continuum. It's one stage does blend into the next almost seamlessly. You wouldn't even be able to identify it if we didn't put those age ranges there. And then with the 4 and 5 especially, it's hard because people could be in any stage of their career, and all of a sudden a company could leave town or a new company comes in, people need to be retrained. It's an ongoing organic process in that regard, and we need to be prepared for that. And that's where this whole continuum notion is so nice, because as we all talk to each other and focus on our own hard work at each action team, it's all going to lend itself to the next.
It really is. And you made an interesting point that we're talking not only about the little children that you see or the children in school or college students, but it's really every employee, every person in our community who could be getting post-secondary training, whether it's a technical institute or community college or a full 4-year degree. Everyone's learning at some point.
You know, Sarah, a lot of times people equate learning just at the elementary and high school level, maybe at the college level, but it does go way beyond that, especially in today's ever-changing technology. You have to keep up to speed, and so we're cognizant of that, and that's why we have stage 5 in there in terms of employee development and incumbent worker training. So we want to make sure that we can do all this to make our Springfield metropolitan area a competitive place, because we're in competition with other communities in the state and around the country, around the world. And so in order to make our community competitive, we want to make sure that we have a good, well-educated, well-skilled workforce. And this is a plan, a schematic, if you will, that we believe will help us achieve that end.
That sounds great. And John, one more time, what's the website if folks want more information?
If they'd like to learn more, sign up, get involved. It's continuumoflearning.org.
All right. Thank you, Alan, so much for joining us, and John also. And of course, our kudos also to United Way for their involvement with this program and this initiative as they move forward with it in coordination with you guys. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for the Springfield Business and Economic Review. Again, if you'd like more information about the Continuum, visit www.continuumoflearning.org. I'm your host for the Springfield Business and Economic Review, Sarah Wolin with the Greater Springfield Chamber of Commerce, and would like to thank you for joining us.